May the best brand win with Scott Robertson's Music Biz Marketing Strategies. Now, here's your host, Scott Robertson.
Hey, happy Friday, everyone. You are tuned to May the Best Brand Win on Entertalk Media, the undisputed leader in music biz talk. And I am Scott, your host, and a man who really isn't worried until all the Waffle Houses start to close. And we haven't seen that yet, so we know that that's your sign. That's when you know it's almost over, right there. You know, Paul B is still quarantined at a secure location. He's unable to join us today, but we're still up on the air here on Entertalk Media. And actually joining me on the show today is pretty exciting. I've got a good friend of mine, great designer and branding and graphics specialist, John Glenicki from the Titan Creative Group. John, welcome to the show. How you doing today?
I'm good, Scott. Thank you for having me back on the show. I love doing these with you. It's always a lot of fun. It's always entertaining. It's always insightful. So thanks for the invite.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to have you. Before I get into our topic today, we're going to be talking about design today. But before I get into it, who am I? What do I do? How do you reach me? That kind of thing. I run a PR and marketing firm in Orange County called Robertson Communications. You can find me on Twitter at RobertsonCom, 2 M's like communications. You can send me an email, Scott at RobertsonCom, 2 M's like communications.com. Or you can find me on Facebook, facebook.com/RobertsonCom. That's where we're at. And also these days, I'm also a certified story brand guide. So I can help create even better brand narratives for people, content, website wireframes. You'll figure out how the story goes on a website, sales copy, and of course, narrative driven, powerful public relations, for my clients. So reach out to me if you have any questions about how this goofy stuff of marketing works. I'm always one of the people out here that's here to help you. And today you've tuned into a great episode. This is episode 152 of The Big Show, and I call the emotion of marketing design. As good marketers, we know that message and strategy come first, followed by great design, right? But great design is extremely important, as long as it follows and supports the rest of the story. So, and there's so many emotions that kind of get tied up in design, and those things can really serve a brand. And those things can hurt you as well, as we're going to talk about in one case today. So, today we're going to talk about the design and how to stay on the right side of it. And, we're also going to see, what companies are working enough hours this week to be winning and losing. And, this is another J.D. Powers and Associates award-winning episode of the show. So you've turned into a good one. John's here with us. We're going to get into and talk about his favorite subject, which is, design and that kind of thing. So John, just an opening question. You've been a designer, for a long time, all your, professional life. How do you deal with the idea of emotion in design?
Great question. Well, the demographic plays such an important part of anything that you design, understanding your demographic. And, when you're designing for youth, you're obviously going to approach something much different than when you're designing something for, an older demographic. And so that's, for me, always an essential when starting a project is understanding the demographic. Who am I trying to appeal to with this design? And what do they like? What am I selling? Or what is the company, the brand? What is it selling? Is it a product? Is it a service? And so there's a lot of things that come into play, obviously, but I always start with understanding the demographics, the age group, and that's almost my starting point.
Nice. Well, what inspired me to kind of do this topic this week was my favorite football team, the Los Angeles Rams, did a rebrand. They've been teasing this thing for months. They said, we've got a new logo and it's great and this kind of thing. And then they came out with the logo and the fans, there's no way the fans could have hated this anymore. There's just no way. There was so much hate. And there's still, and by the way, it's not like it's over. There's still so much hate for this logo. And it got me to thinking, for things like football teams, where people get their emotions all tied up in symbols that mean something, pretty powerful to sports fans. Certainly, they stand for more than just the team, right? There's a lot of emotional assignments that people make to these things.
Yeah.
Is there a way in a situation like the Rams logo, which is such an emotionally charged thing, right? Is there any way to win, or is any change going to be perceived as crap? What do you think?
Well, I think that you can look at a lot of logos. I personally am. I didn't grow up with football. I grew up in Canada, so I'm a huge hockey fan.
Hockey, sure, and, sure.
So I can tell you that there were a couple of NHL teams that tried to do the same thing, probably about a decade ago, maybe a little longer. The New York Islanders being one of them, and the Buffalo Sabres. The Buffalo Sabres actually, they completely changed everything, where they went to red, silver, and black, and created a much tougher crest. And the same thing, there was outrage, and there was such a fan backlash that they were just forced after. I believe they kept it for 2 years, and they just went back to what they originally had. There's just some things, whether you love them or don't, I think you just have to leave them alone. I think in the case of the Rams, I think you have to leave it alone. What's interesting, though, is the Anaheim Ducks. They were originally the Mighty Ducks. Now they went through a rebrand.
Yeah.
Now they improved everything in my opinion. I think the Ducks logo is brilliant, and they changed the colors where it was originally that teal color. They went to this green. No, sorry, not green. Orange and almost like a tan or a gold, and the white and the black. And I think that there was definitely a huge improvement, because the Duck playing hockey was just very cartoonish.
Yeah,
and really tough. I think they did a tremendous job on that one. But for the Rams, and looking at what the Rams did, I actually thought if you took away the word Rams, it actually looked like almost like LA, like almost like a morning show where you have the sun. You have the hook of it could almost have been a logo for a morning show on the local LA news channel. So I think they should have just left that one alone. For various reasons. It's almost the same as the Raiders. Some things are sacrilegious. You just don't touch them. And, Original Six with hockey, Chicago Blackhawks, Detroit Red Wings. I mean, those logos actually are brilliant. And so whether someone thinks the old Rams logo was brilliant or not, I think that eventually they're going to be forced to do what, I would say the Buffalo Sabres did, and that was to revert and go back to what they originally had. And they may make some merchandise available with the new stuff, but I think eventually they're going to have to cave. And I think what will drive it is when they're not selling any merchandise. It's like, okay, well, we're not selling any merchandise. So this was a failure. So
I'll read you a headline. Eric Dickerson, a Hall of Fame Rams running back, Los Angeles Rams running back, Eric Dickerson, from back in the day. Basically, he's very outspoken when it comes to things about the Rams. And he says, and I'll read you a headline from the New York Post this week. It says, Eric Dickerson's mission to change the Rams logo, quote, and in his quote, "It looks like a penis." That's what he says.
It looks like a what?
A penis. A penis. That's what he said, and so that so that makes everybody kind of go. It looks like what? He means like the new ram head on the forehead of the ram. You can see something else if you were looking for such things, I suppose.
Yeah, if you're looking for it.
If you're looking for it, you can kind of see it. But I think that's. As a marketer, I don't think there's any greater fail than when one of your Hall of Fame old, running backs comes out and says that your logo looks like a penis now. I feel like that's the bar for failure right there. I mean that's you can't fail any harder than that. That's as much as you can fail. Right there.
So, in looking at the history of the logos, I think the one in 2017, which is I think it's probably the most recent, obviously, before this new change, but I think that one is great. And
I really like that one. Yeah. Yeah,
So,
it's true. It's no, you're exactly, and a lot of fans kind of said that. And at first, I kind of wanted to give it but in the logo you're referring to, the one with the kind of LA, and it has like a horn that wraps around it.
yep.
It doesn't look like a ram, right? I mean, you're the LA Rams, and then you've taken the ram out of your logo. Like you said, it looks like LA morning show.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting topic. So, designers have to make choices, right? Whether it's colors, whether it's what colors kind of go together, and those kind of things. Those emotional reaction with the audience. How do you guys pick which colors to do what emotion you're trying to evoke? I mean, is there a science to that? Do you just kind of know what works after doing it for a while? I mean, is there like a book? What? Yeah.
Great question.
Well,
and there are people that are probably very scientific about it. And I don't know that I would approach it from a scientific standpoint, other than I think it's more of an emotional thing for me too. When I'm designing something, I'm old school. I started my career as an illustrator, and before I sort of branched out and really studied branding, I was a commercial illustrator, and I was doing illustrations for, back in Canada, Labatt, some big brands. And so I traditionally start anything that I'm designing from an artist, like I sketch stuff. Now, I don't really bring color into it. I try to just sketch things that look cool. Or look interesting, or may fit the brand. I start it that way, and then colors for me are secondary. It's creating something that is different or unique. The older I've gotten, the more that I've done, I find that the things that I probably thought were cool when I was 25 are certainly not. They're things that I wouldn't necessarily do now, only because I understand branding on such a different level. And it's almost like both of us being musicians, guitar players, bass players, so when you get a whammy bar on a guitar, the first thing you start doing is going overboard with that whammy bar because it's something new for you. And it's almost the same thing when you're designing too, is that sometimes you don't know where to start, or let's say you're young, you're inexperienced. You might have, and I've seen some guys that have great ideas, but sometimes they just put too many things into one logo. And so, again, as you study brands, you study branding, you realize that most brands really have just one dominant color, and they may have a secondary color. They may have a third color, but by and large, a lot of them have one predominant color, one secondary color. And then that's what they stick with. So as I've gotten older, I've really stuck to that, but that doesn't come into play until I start to sketch. And I don't try to use fonts. There are times when I will use a font in a logo. And there are times where if I'm using a font, I have to do something different with the font. I have to change something about it just to make it unique. Because it may be funny, but I can look at a logo sometimes and go, oh, that's Impact, and I can literally recreate the logo in, 5 seconds. And they didn't do anything with the leading, the spacing, nothing. And, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But for me, I try to be a little bit unique with something that I've done. And, so let's use Cox Communications for anybody who's familiar with Cox. If you've noticed, they've introduced a new logo, and they took those 3 spikes off of the X now, and they've done something with just a color, and it's rounded now. And so it's a subtle change. It's a change, but it's a subtle change. It doesn't make a difference to me. I mean, but they did, the first one was simplistic in that they only did the slashes on the X. I mean, if they tried to do slashes on every letter, then that's a little bit overkill. So they kept it simple. So I may be veering off topic here, but in terms of colors, I don't introduce colors until I've sort of got a lettering that I like. and I sketch it. I'll do variations, iterations, and I'll move it up, and I'll eventually bring it to where I build it in Illustrator. But I always start with the sketching. So and then
cool.
colors different.
What do you think about what I was thinking as you were talking? I mean, that's interesting. So we're in the middle of this coronavirus situation. Every treatment I've seen for coronavirus is like all caps, with like a blood red background, and it's like bright red, kind of blood red, and that's a design choice, right? And the graphics that the news are using and those kind of things. I mean, that's a design choice specifically about creating emotion and specifically about creating fear. I mean,
right.
Right. I mean, you see that, right? You see all the treatments of coronavirus are scary. They're scary.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's almost like they want to emote fear in people. So let's use and it's a subliminal thing where you are introducing blood. You're not suggesting, but you're just saying blood red, this deep blood red. And, colors do operate on a different level for people. And without ever spelling something out, that can be something that people just sort of tune into. Like, oh, this is a pandemic like we've never seen before. And definitely the color definitely plays a part of that, for sure. I mean, if you use a teal blue or a cyan blue, you're going to have a different emotion tied to that one. Absolutely.
Interesting. And also you don't see like the blood red used for like puppy adoption today, and they use like a blood red background, with all apps. It's like, it's just, it seems like, and all the news coverage that I've seen, I'm like, is there like a coronavirus graphics database where they have all these blood red graphics and everybody just keeps using the same ones?
I guess if we went looking for it, we'd probably find it. And sometimes people they're not unique in their approach. So they'll type in COVID and they'll look at images in whatever search engine they're using and say, oh, that looks good. Let me replicate that. So
no doubt.
Yeah, who knows? I gotta admit that I'm not really staying on top of the actual news like you. I go to alternate sources.
Good for you. Yeah.
Get my news on what's happening.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why you're not one of the people out that I saw at Walmart today with the surgical face mask over your face or, pantyhose or something, trying to protect you from the bugs. It's like at some point you got to look in the mirror. You really do. You really, really do. That's what I would say. So my last question is, are there any assignments that you've taken where there's so much emotion attached to something, and if you change it, you're going to lose? Like the LA Rams team, the logo design team must have known how much emotion, the emotional wall that they were going to try to climb. Are there ever any instances where you realize no matter what you do, it's going to be a losing fight?
Great question. I'm not actually, off the top of my head, I'm not recalling anything where I was involved in a rebrand where something that was so well known was being changed. I can't say that I've worked. A lot of the stuff that I do is from inception. So I'm there to brand from, whether it's the name, the correct name, like we're brand guys where we operate on a different level where, there's a lot of questions you ask prior to doing anything. So I'm not recalling anything, but there's a lot of thought that goes into, it's not a quick thing. A logo is a logo. Okay. A logo becomes a brand's identity. It's very, very important, but there are many components that make up a brand. Now the brand identity does become the face of the brand, as does the message. So it has to be treated very seriously, and a lot of thought has to go into it. And it's really good to bounce and show people, these are the options that we have, and show a group of people. Interesting. So maybe on this topic, there was a company that I worked with several years ago. I won't mention who they are, but I created their brand identity, and they absolutely loved it. And so we're getting ready to move to the next phase. And the owner says to me, "Oh, this one girl saw it, and she didn't think that was the right color at all. She said we should be using this color." And there was a tremendous panic from him. And this was somebody who really didn't understand branding. And the color that I had chosen actually was friendly to both men and women, because their brand catered to both. So, and again, that's another thing too, is that there are colors that will work with both, and there are colors that might not necessarily, like, if it's something that's unisex or something that's for both men and women. Pink isn't necessarily the best color. Purple might not be the best color, depending on what it is. But in that instance, boy, did I ever see panic. And I had to almost talk him off the ledge on that one. So,
yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
But it was like one person's opinion. And, he was so quick to jump because of one person's opinion. And forgot that I'd been doing this for 20 years. And that is interesting. Well, we're talking here today with John Glenicki from Titan Creative Group about the emotion of marketing design. Come on back in segment 2. We're going to talk about who's winning and losing this week on May the Best Brand Win on Entertalk Media. Happy Friday, everybody. You are tuned to Best Brand Win on Entertalk Media, the undisputed leader in music biz talk. I am Scott, your host. I'm hanging out with John Glenicki. We're talking about the emotion of marketing design today on the program. And we're going to shift gears, as we always do, in segment 2 and talk about who's winning and who's losing. How you doing, John? Still hanging with us? Good. COVID-free, so I'm good.
Awesome. We love that. You know what? Let's start with, it's so hard to find stories this week. Nobody looking this week, so it's hard to find stories. But let's see what we got. Tito's Vodka is winning this week because they are making their very own hand sanitizer and they're giving it away for free. So it's basically they're definitely winning because they said, we advise you not to use our vodka as hand sanitizer, but our distillery has started working hard to get all of the pieces in place to begin production on 24 tons of hand sanitizer that adheres to industry and governmental guidance. And it's like Tito's Vodka hand sanitizer. I was like, that's all kinds of winning right there. That's a way to lean into a problem, right? It's funny because
already number one in vodka. I think they just solidified it with that one.
Oh, absolutely. And they previously had warned customers. I think I covered it on the show. They warned customers about misusing their alcohol. They said, "Hey, look, we are, this hand sanitizer has to be 60% alcohol to be effective, and vodka is only 40%. So it's like better to drink it instead." But then they said, "Well, forget it. We're just going to make hand sanitizer." And so, anyway, all kinds of winning there. Do you like the Tito's vodka, John? You into that?
I'm a vodka guy, and I would say that Tito's seems to be the one that I lean towards if I have the option when ordering. Definitely.
Very nice, very nice. Well, that's all kinds of winning, and we got to give a shout out to Tito's Vodka. For making their hand cleanser, and 24 tons of it. That seems like quite a bit to me. That's a lot of hand sanitizer.
I want to see the bottle.
Yeah, exactly. The packaging's cool. You can take a look at it at boldwithane.com. There's a Tito's Vodka story up there, and it shows you a picture of the bottle. The bottle's pretty slick. It looks like a small vodka bottle. Honestly, it looks like a little vodka bottle. Yeah, made in Austin, Texas. Tito's Vodka hand cleanser, and so now they are it's in the testing phase. You can't quite get it yet. If you go to the brand's Facebook page, that's when you're going to be able to get your free bottle. They're going to give it away for free. And they're going to give it to people who need it the most. I don't know how they determine that. You can either go to their website or their Facebook page, and they will give you updates on when you can get your very own Tito's Vodka hand sanitizer. Very exciting. All kinds of winning. That's what I say. This situation has driven people to some unfamiliar roles and organizations. And the Cowboy Museum in Texas, they put their head of security in charge of their Twitter, and because nobody else is there, and his tweets are hysterically funny. I mean, he's not a guy that really knows social media very well, and sometimes that can be the best guy to put on social media, by the way. But his name is Tim Send. He's the head of security. He put it's one of the best Twitter feeds you're going to find. It's from the National Cowboy Museum. His first post was, "Hello, my name is Tim, and I'm the head of security for the Cowboy. I've been asked to take on the additional duty of social media while the museum is closed. I am new to this, but excited. My team will continue to protect and monitor the museum." And then he just posts a picture of himself smiling with a big old Texas 10-gallon hat and a friggin' handlebar mustache. It's awesome. So then the rest of his tweets are just him walking around the museum, taking pictures and telling stories about what's in the museum. And they are fantastic. He basically, like one of them, he says, this is one of his actual tweets. He says, "This is the hat and eye patch the Duke wore in the movie True Grit. They're part of our exposition about the True Grit. Lots of interesting props and clothes. I'm told I can't try any of these on. Hashtag," and he writes out the word hashtag John Wayne. Then he says, Lucas, my grandson, told me to use hashtags. Thanks. Thanks.
That's funny.
And then he signs every tweet, "Thanks, Tim," like it's a letter.
Funny.
You seriously have got to you've got to check out the at ncwhm.com, the National Cowboy Museum in Texas. You've got to see his tweets. They are absolutely fantastic. And I think the National Cowboy Museum has found its new social media manager.
That's funny. I will check it out.
It's really, really good. And I love, there's a whole series of them where he's he's actually just talking to his grandchildren through Twitter, through the company's Twitter. Okay. He's just messaging them. It's really funny. Yeah. Anyway, that's all kinds of winning. Exactly. And that's what happens when you like I said, you run into a crisis situation and you find things. And like as a marketer, if you're the marketing person in charge of the Cowboy Museum, you need to get Tim engaged in more stuff. He needs to be on some morning shows. I feel like Tim could be your celebrity that the world is ready for. And just from reading his stuff, you need to use Tim Send a lot more, I think. Pretty solid.
Yeah. I am going to check him out.
Yes, do that. It's a lot of fun. And then another, who's losing in this whole thing? Colleges. There's a story in USA Today this week about U.S. colleges are scrambled to react to the coronavirus pandemic, and now their very existence is in jeopardy. Now, that could be one of those headlines that the media kind of used to lure you in, but the story doesn't really say that. But now they're talking about, now that people are starting to get used to doing distance learning, right, without dormitories and without those kind of things, a lot of people are saying, well, does college, have to be this incredibly prohibitively expensive, and could all these costs be, contained, and this experience be managed in a more virtual way? I don't know. I think, I spent 4 years at the University of Missouri. It was a good 4 years to be in a different environment. I learned a lot of things that weren't just in the school books. I learned, about life, managing my life in a way that you don't learn in your parents' house, quite honestly. And so I just think, I think that there is, value in that. you know, but the one thing that colleges are going to have to figure out, you know, post pandemic, post world closure kind of thing, is, you know, what is their role, and then of course what is a fair cost for that role, because I think most people would agree that the cost has gone up and up and up, and the value has not risen with the cost. I don't know. It's an interesting situation. I think colleges are definitely losing because of this, because they certainly got pegged for not reacting fast enough and not shutting down. There was all that, and then there's this nasty story in USA Today which introduces the idea that, well, maybe college as we know it isn't quite so useful. So, what do you think of that, John?
Well, I have a son that's finishing high school. He's in 12th grade, and he's going to be off to college next year. And I have two boys. One's 15, one's 18, and I had a heart-to-heart with them not too long ago. And both my boys happen to be super smart kids. And I told them, you guys need to look at jobs that will always be there. And as an example, there's always going to be a need for a patent attorney or attorneys, but I drilled down to patent attorney because I think both my boys could be engineers. And to become a patent attorney, you have to have an engineering degree first, and then you can go into patent. So I was throwing things out at them where they were kind of like rolling their eyes at me like, you don't know anything. But, we happen to know quite a lot. And I just said, listen, you guys, there are things that, you're both super smart. You got to look at the big picture. You have to look at a job that is here or that's not going to be here for 5 years and then gone, because that does happen where, you could fall into something and say, okay, this is great. This is going to be great. And then suddenly that career is gone. And funny thing is that I do run into these people on a regular basis where, they made a lot of money at some point in their lives and they're driving for Lyft or Uber now, and they're in their mid 50s and they don't really have tremendous skills. I would say there's a lot of people who could be a manager. So, but when you get into people who are 55, most companies say, well, I certainly don't want to hire this guy. He's going to want way more money than we want to pay him. And so they end up having to switch careers. So I just told them, I said, look at the big picture. You guys can pursue all the things that you want to pursue. They're both, my oldest is into music. My youngest is into film editing. I got it into web development, graphic design. I got
Nice.
them into these things. I keep sort of urging them to learn how to make money doing a lot of different things, having multiple revenue streams, and studying
Smart.
something that could be great. But I'm sure that people that went through 4 years, 5 years, whatever it is, got a degree, and they're possibly waiting tables. I mean, what is the outcome? What's at the end of that college degree? There are no guarantees. You might have $300,000 in student loans, and I don't know. Are there careers that you can make a substantial amount of money, or that will be here? I don't know. It's an interesting world we live in these days, and I don't know. As a father, I'm just trying to guide them and urge them to keep in mind that they're both super smart and both they both have talent. But don't just take something because it's easy for you. My youngest is great at graphics. He's doing really, really well at everything that he's doing, but it's
Nice.
easy. A million people who are doing graphics, sadly. So, and this is where, even in my shoes, this is where people they don't understand the value. Some don't understand the value, so they shop for the lowest price.
Well, they should definitely, your son should definitely get a job in graphics for the Los Angeles Rams. It feels to me like they could use some talent. It feels like to me they could use some graphic talent from what I've seen. Geez.
Yeah.
I was just reading another story too. It's funny, because people mentioned, well, can the college experience, be kind of virtual? Can it be like a webcam type of thing? And it could. I mean, it certainly could. I just saw an interesting thing that said there's a new company called Mood that is you can go to moodhealth.com. They offer $50 a month for clinical care psychiatry. And most meds, psychiatric meds, under $20 with no insurance necessary. And I was like, well, I could see that, filling an important role, but I wonder if there are some, exchanges, between a doctor and a patient that might be stronger, like face to face. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, so I don't know that, but I tend to think of those kind of things as like, are you really going to do that over a webcam? But maybe you could do it over a webcam. I don't know. I just and same kind of thing with college. It's like, is that the same experience, over a webcam, or are you really experiencing, what that that other college experience is like, the real one. The one in the room with somebody, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah. No, I know what you're saying. I went to I took illustration, and I look back fondly on my time because you make not that I'm friends with anybody, but acquaintances. You see people's artwork, you see their work ethic, you interact, you learn from them, but we live in an interesting time where kids don't really socialize the way that we did when we were younger. And so I don't know, maybe that is the way of the future. Everything is remote. You're logging in. I do know some teachers who are actually having to do their classes remotely, and then the students are tuning in, which is really interesting. It may be the way of the future. I don't know. I also question how many brick and mortar stores can stay open with everyone moving to Amazon. And the funny thing is one of my businesses, my guitar skin business, because I have a trademark on Insane Skins, I was able to open up an Amazon store. And
sure.
I bought it the longest time, but then I thought, well, people go to Facebook, if I run Facebook ads, people go to Facebook to, see what their friends did on the weekend, or, read some great memes. They're not necessarily there to shop. Whereas when people go to Amazon, they are there to shop. So I just figured that, maybe this is the smart thing to do, is to have a great presence on Amazon. But then I also start to question, how long can stores stay open? And is everybody going to be an Amazon driver at some point? A Lyft driver, an Uber driver, an Amazon driver. So interesting times. I just, all to have our restaurants and locations where you pick up your Amazon stuff. I don't know. Fun times, interesting times.
Yeah, the virus has certainly exposed a few of those things. And I got to say, just a quick shout out for your Insane Guitar Skins. You guys listening in Radio Land, you should absolutely check out John's work on these designs. He has a way of having you can reskin your guitar with all kinds of really cool. It's almost like a big sticker, honestly, but it doesn't hurt to finish.
Yep.
And then and you put it on in sort of a careful way, so it doesn't bubble and all that action. And then and John did that to one of my old Ibanez guitars, and we put this kind of stainless steel look on it or whatever. And I use it at church and stuff, and people love it, and they're like, God, is that guitar made out of stainless steel or whatever? And I mean, it just those designs that you've come up with, for Insane, guitars are really, really cool stuff, man. And I encourage everybody. What's the website on that, just so people can check out your work on that? Yeah. It's so cool.
Well, thank you, Scott. Insane Skins, INZANE Skins, SKINS.com. Insane Skins, and awesome. I think I've probably got about 300 plus different designs at this point. And I started building my own guitars when I was 19. I was always fascinated with great finishes and so I, at a young age, started building my own guitars, refinishing my guitars, And that love of graphics and just great guitar finishes is something that stayed with me all, for the last 30 years. So I still have two businesses that revolve around guitars and guitar finishing. I have paintyourownguitar.com, and then I have Insane Skins with an offshoot. So it's fun stuff. It's an easy way because, there was a time when I used to airbrush guitars so if somebody wanted an intricate design, I airbrushed it, and it was very, very expensive. And, so the skins are a cost-effective way for somebody to update the look of their guitar. If they have a great guitar that plays great, but they don't like the color, the skins work out great. And it's a brand that has been around for, I think, about 12 years now. I've had Insane Skins, and it is it's a revenue stream. It's a really good revenue stream for me. And I'm actually, I'm expanding this year. Sadly, with this COVID has kind of put the damper on a little bit of it, but I'm building a platform where people will be able to upload their own images and to be able to place that on
neat.
And so that's my next step in the evolution. And because I do a lot of custom work. In fact, as we've been doing this podcast, I've had two different orders come in from guys who want custom skins. One guy whose dog passed away, and so he wants to do sort of a commemorative skin. So I'm doing that. And, again, so if we want to talk about branding, we want to talk about a brand identity. There's something interesting about Insane Skins. I mean, Insane is a play on the word insane, but my youngest son's name is Zane. So that's where Insane came from. And I want to give a shout to my friend, another branding guy, my friend Rick Brown back in Canada, because he was the one that said, you want to call it Insane. So,
nice.
Sometimes, those branding guys, boy, you guys are smart.
Such cool stuff.
I just felt that word insane conjured up something that was just something, I don't know, electrifying about it. And so if you see the graphic, the actual brand identity of Insane, it's just a scribble. I scribbled each letter individually and scanned it, brought it in, placed them the way I wanted to place them, and then created that nameplate. So that's how that was done. But it just,
very cool.
To me, it was a visual that I sort of saw in my mind, and it just needed something different. So that's coming back full circle to brand and brand identity. So I actually have chosen colors of purple and kind of a yellowish gold for that.
Yeah.
Which have always been a couple of my favorite colors to begin with. But those are the brand colors that I chose for Insane. But
I love it. Let's, we're going to take a little break. That's it for segment 2. You guys have been listening to May the Best Brand Win on Entertalk Media. That's who's winning and losing this week. Come on back in segment 3. John G is going to give us a few of his tips, for creating, great design that has great emotion. So come on back in segment 3. Happy Friday, everybody. You are so smart because you are tuned to May the Best Brand Win on Entertalk Media, the undisputed leader in music biz talk. I'm Scott, your host, hanging out with John Glenicki from Titan Creative Group on the show today. We've been talking about the emotion of marketing-based design. And here in segment 3, John is going to give us a few of his top tips for how to create great design and also how to create design that creates the emotion that your brand is looking for. So John, what do you have for us? What's your first tip for us today?
Well, this may come with some backlash, but I am going to say it because I think it's really important for people to understand that there are these sites out there where you can buy as many logos as you want for $29, or you can go to Fiverr and you can get a logo. I push people away from that. I recommend that they do not hire someone from one of those sites to create their brand identity, because the brand identity is the face of your brand. And it is so important that somebody understand branding, not about creating a logo, but creating a brand. Because if you understand how to create a brand, then this is going to help you dictate what incorrect graphic. So I'll give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
I was working with a dentist in Orange County not too long ago, and he had this new business that he wanted to launch that was going to compete with the likes of Delta Dental. Okay, so Delta Dental is a multi-million conglomerate. Okay, he wanted to launch his business with cartoon teeth. I kid you not.
Oh,
and
yeah, no.
When I thought, you're joking, right? And he was proud of himself that he could get all the logos that he wanted for $29. I quickly put the kibosh on that. So my advice is not go shopping there. And one of the other reasons is most of the people that are working on Fiverr live in another country, and I don't know how to market in some of those foreign countries, just like they wouldn't know how to market. They don't understand the American market. They can look at something, but doesn't necessarily mean they understand the market, how to appeal to a market, how to create the right faceplate, nameplate, graphic for a brand in the United States. So that's my first thing, is to stay away from those. Whether it's unpopular or not, I think it's worth saying, because
I'll jump in with you here. Man, I agree with you 100%. I think that, there's a company called Interbrand, and they can calculate the dollar value of your brand. They can tell you your brand is worth this much. And they're a very large company, and so they look at share price, they look at revenue, they look at employees, they look at all these different factors in this formula, and they can pop out sort of a dollar value of what the brand is worth, right? And you realize that, like, the Coca-Cola brand, is worth over $1 billion. And I mean, after a long period of time, just the things that make up their brand alone, it can become one of the most valuable and powerful assets that a company owns. And I agree with you 100%, John, when you say that, you don't want to get your most important assets. You don't want to go cheap on that stuff. You want to make sure you're investing the time to develop the story and the time to develop the assets, your visual assets. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I think that there's no greater determining factor whether a business is going to live or die as to whether they get do they have a clear story, and do they have a powerful brand that's going to resonate with consumers. And marketing is an exercise in memorization. So do you have something that the market can memorize very easily? So I agree with you 100%, man.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah.
What is what's your second tip, buddy?
My second tip is do not incorporate a graphic that's synonymous with your industry into your brand identity, if you can help it. Now, the reason I say that is recently I worked with a client who wanted to create a concierge business brand, a concierge for cars. Okay. And so in hearing him talk, hearing about his connections, the first thing I thought of it is, okay, first of all, extending a brand. How would we extend this brand? And so if you create a concierge business, you can basically sell. So he wanted to do cars, but you could do boats, you could do rental properties, you could do vacation homes, all of those things to the same people. Because a lot of times, if you're talking about a certain clientele, if it's a concierge business, they have less time, they have more money. They're willing to spend the money to have somebody help them find what they want. But when we were talking about the brand identity, he said, and I really would like, I don't know, I'm showing you this because I think this might be cool to put into the logo. And he showed me the silhouette of a car. And I said, absolutely not. And I said, here's why. And now, so if a business is a painting, like they paint houses, okay, a lot of times you'll see there's a paintbrush incorporated into the logo, or if they're home builders and you see a roof, like all of that stuff to me is like, it becomes a little bit cliche. It's like, just because you're doing that doesn't mean you have to put a roof on your logo. You don't have to put a paintbrush. If your business says home painting or whatever, you don't have to use that. So I always look for other ways to be a little bit more unique. So that would be the next thing that I would suggest, is be a little unique in your brand identity. Don't just tie in something, you don't see Calvin Klein. There's not a pair of underwear in his logo. So, Calvin Klein, it's a font. It just has a different look. And this, he doesn't limit, the Calvin Klein brand isn't limited because they put a pair of underwear in the logo.
Yeah, absolutely. And exactly. And I agree with you 100%. And story first, right? You come up with what problem are we solving? How can we be clear about what our story is? And then if you're able to do that, you can hand off to a designer and say, this is the emotion that we're going for. This is what we're trying to do. Imagine it informs the design and makes it a lot better.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Tip number 3. I always tell people, look at branding and brand identity as an investment, not an expense. And what I mean by that is, buying office supplies is an expense. But hiring a person or a firm to create and build your brand, that is an investment. And that is a lifelong investment. Do it wisely and you'll never have to change. You just hired the right people. I like to think that all the companies that I've worked with, the clients, businesses, that what I created for them has stood the test of time, and it has. It's been successful for the people that I've worked with. So I like to tell people, look at it as an investment, and using that analogy, because I do run into this a lot, is people, they put all of their money. So I'm talking about 100% into their research and development, all of their budget, and they leave nothing for branding and marketing, website, marketing collateral, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And that's a mistake. I like to tell them, if you spent $10,000 on your research and development to develop your patented or your proprietary formula of your whatever it is that you have, the expense that you apply for the branding and the marketing of the website should be equal to that. That's my thinking. Because,
nice.
And I have run into this so many times, people who have, and they'll argue with me, oh my God, my product is so much better than the competition, and here's why: we haven't spared any expense, and we've put it, the best products into ours, but then they put it in really cheap packaging. And they don't realize that they're shooting themselves in the foot. Is that we, as you and I know, and most people do, they might know this, is that consumers purchase based on emotion. When they look at something, how does it make them feel? Because you don't know what something tastes like before cracking it open and tasting it. So you're just assuming, and wherever that's coming from, there's an emotional connection that as you look at that package, you go, oh, this best packaging is, I bet this, look at the words that they use to describe that flavor. I bet it tastes amazing. So I'm a big believer in marketing are so vital to the success of a business that there should be no expense spared in that avenue. So that's my next tip.
That's a good one. Well, man, I'll tell you, I mean, so much good stuff today. How do people get in touch with you to design all their stuff? What's best contact info for you?
Best contact info is, they can go to my site, Titan Creative Group, all one word, TitanCreativeGroup.com, and they can see plenty of stuff on there, plenty of the stuff that we've done. And they can also reach out to me at TitanCreativeGroup@gmail.com. So that's the best way to get a hold of me. And then if they want to talk about guitar skins, if there's any guitar players or bass players out there, I love creating unique skins for people that have a meaning for them. So I love doing that stuff too. So they can reach me at insaneskins.com as well.
Fantastic. Well, you guys have been listening to John Klinicki from Titan Creative Group. John, thanks so much for the time today. Really appreciated having you on the show. It was great. Fantastic job.
All fun.
And
always fun.
What have we learned today? We learned that when you make design choices, you're making choices to create emotions. And those emotions can make or break the brand. If you do it the right way, message and story first, followed by powerful emotion-based design, your marketing will be amazing. Again, special thanks to John G. Thanks for hanging with us today. And that's it for me,
Absolutely.
folks. I'll be back next week with a fresh show. You guys stay safe out there. Stop buying all the toilet paper. We'll talk to you later. Thanks.